Laughter and chatter filled the car like a hive abuzz with anticipation. "This is going to be epic, guys." Rachel's voice pierced through the excitement, her words bouncing off the windows fogged by our collective breath. The mountains loomed ahead, their peaks shrouded in mystery and the promise of isolation from the everyday grind. "Check out the view, will you?" Mark pressed his face against the glass, eyes wide with the kind of hunger that only untouched snow could sate. His reflection, distorted by the condensation, seemed to mirror the twisted pathways we were about to navigate. "Trust me, it's even better up close," I said, gripping the steering wheel a little tighter as I navigated the winding mountain road. My heart raced, not just from the thrill of the climb, but also from the responsibility I felt resting squarely on my shoulders. "Joseph? Man, how much further?" Sam leaned forward between the seats, eagerness etched into his features. His question was a familiar tune, one that played every few miles. "Almost there," I replied, the same answer as before. "Can't wait to see this fancy cabin you've been hyping up," Lena teased from the back seat, skepticism lacing her tone. She had a way of keeping us grounded, always questioning, always prodding. "Fancy might be an understatement," I shot back with a grin, the corners of my eyes crinkling in amusement. "You'll see." The engine rumbled beneath us, a constant reminder of our journey's pulse. Trees whipped by in a blur, their shadows reaching towards the car as if trying to snatch us from our safe cocoon of steel and glass. I couldn't shake the notion that the deeper we ventured into the heart of these mountains, the more we became part of a world, not entirely our own, a world that watched, waited, and whispered secrets we weren't meant to hear. "All right, team," I announced as the final turn approached. "Prepare for cabin life." There was a chorus of whoops and cheers, each voice tinged with the wild edge of freedom found only in the escape from the mundane. "Lead the way," Mark chided, his smile infectious. "Always do," I murmured, though the words were lost in the roar of the wind that greeted us as we emerged onto a clearing that promised both sanctuary and seclusion. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the knowledge that whatever lay ahead, it was up to me to steer us through it. The moment we burst through the cabin's threshold, a wave of warmth enveloped us, greedily pulling away the chill that had clung to our skin like a second layer. The grandeur hit me first. The regal stone fireplace dominating the room, the rich mahogany walls lined with bookshelves teeming with leather-bound secrets, and the plush carpets that swallowed our footsteps whole. "Wow," Avery breathed out, her eyes wide as she spun on the spot, taking in every inch of luxury. Her voice was a soft bell in the cathedral-like expanse of the living area. "Check this out," Lucas called from somewhere beyond my line of sight, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings, inviting us to discover more hidden corners of opulence. I set down our gear near the door, the solid clunk echoing back at me, a reminder that this cabin was ours for the taking, at least for the weekend. As I shrugged off my coat, I caught Olivia's gaze drifting toward the expansive windows, drinking in the view of the jagged peaks clawing at the sky. "Guys," Mason interjected, pushing his glasses up his nose with a sense of urgency, "we might want to get settled quickly." I followed his pointed finger to where the window framed a scene far less welcoming than the interior. Clouds gathered like an army of dark wisps, amassing power as they rolled over the mountains. A distant rumble of thunder muttered threats that even the thick glass couldn't keep at bay. "Snowstorms coming," I stated, more to myself than the others, but Nina caught the concern in my voice. She nodded slightly, her pale face a canvas for the flicker of worry that passed over it. "Let's make sure we've got everything we need inside then," I said, turning back to the group, my command cutting through the initial awe that had sedated their actions. "This place will be just as good a fortress as it is a palace." "Fortress," Riley echoed, her tone light, but the furrow in her brow told me she grasped the severity behind my words. "Never know when you'll need one," I replied with a half-smile, hoping to mask my own creeping unease as the symphony of thunder composed a prelude to chaos outside our mountain haven. "Okay, let's divvy up the rooms," I called out, trying to shepherd the group into some semblance of order. But as we filtered through the spacious hallway, laden with our gear, the underlying tensions began to surface. "Joseph, you don't have to play king here," Alex snapped, his voice like a whip crack in the grandeur of the cabin. "We can figure it out ourselves." "Chill, man. He's just trying to help," Nina defended, casting me an apologetic glance that spoke volumes about the tightrope she walked between her loyalty and her desire for peace. "Of course, Alex wants the master suite," Riley muttered under her breath, loud enough for us all to hear. "He always does." "Hey," Alex rounded on her, his eyes blazing with a challenge. "You got a problem with that?" Guys, Mason interjected, ever the peacemaker. "Doesn't matter where we sleep when we've got this whole place to ourselves, right?" But the simmering rivalry refused to be quelled so easily, the air charged with more than just the electricity of the storm outside. As they bickered, I couldn't help but think back to the fleeting moment earlier when Alex had pulled me aside, his face unusually pale, whispering about some secret he needed to talk to me about later. A secret I feared could splinter the fragile unity of our group. "Whatever," Alex finally conceded, throwing his bag down at the foot of the staircase. "I'm going to check out the rest of the place." "Good idea," I agreed too quickly, eager to diffuse the situation further. "Let's get the lay of the land." As we spread out to explore, I found myself drifting towards the large windows that unveiled the increasingly hostile landscape. The sky was now a tapestry of darkening hues, and the trees swayed ominously in the rising wind. "Look at this place, though," Nina murmured beside me, her gaze sweeping across the luxurious room. "It's almost unreal." "Almost," I echoed, my eyes inadvertently drawn to the forest beyond. And that's when I saw it, a shadow that moved against the natural sway of the branches. My heart lurched. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The outline was human, but the movements were all wrong. Too jerky, too feral. "Joseph, what is it?" Nina's voice sliced through my concentration. "Nothing," I lied, shaking my head. But I kept watching as the shape seemed to blur and then vanish into the white flurry that was starting to fall. It was probably just a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination fueled by the building anxiety. "Joseph." It was Alex's shout from upstairs that tore me away from the window. "You gotta see this." With a last uneasy glance over my shoulder, I hurried to join him, wondering if the real threat might not be lurking amongst us, rather than outside in the creeping shadows of the encroaching storm. The wind screamed like a harbinger of doom, clawing at the cabin with icy fingers as snowflakes swarmed outside, obliterating our view. I watched in silence as the comforting blanket of white began to feel more like a shroud, sealing us within these timber walls. "Guys, this is getting bad," Alex's voice quivered, the bravado from earlier reduced to a threadbare veneer. The storm had come upon us with unnerving rapidity, transforming the landscape into an unrecognizable expanse of relentless white. "Can't even see the cars anymore," Rachel added, her breath fogging up the window pane. The warmth of the cabin was a stark contrast to the fury that raged beyond its confines. We had planned for relaxation, an escape from reality, not to be prisoners of a mountain's wrath. A sense of claustrophobia crept upon me as the realization set in. We were trapped. The jovial atmosphere that had cocooned us during the drive up seemed a distant memory now, replaced by an undercurrent of dread. "Joseph, what do we do?" Nina's eyes searched mine for certainty. Certainty I didn't possess. I felt their gaze, heavy and expectant, adding weight to my shoulders that already bore the burden of my own rising panic. Okay, let's stay calm, I said, forcing confidence into my voice. My heart drummed a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I scanned the room, taking stock of our supplies, mentally preparing for what might come next. Was it enough? Could I keep everyone safe? First things first, we need to make sure all doors and windows are secured, I instructed, trying to ignore the gnawing fear in my gut. Conserve heat, stick together. We ride this out. Nodding, they moved to follow my lead, but as I watched them, doubt gnawed at me, a relentless pest. Should I tell them about the shadow in the trees? No, they were scared enough already. It was probably nothing, a trick of the mind spurred by isolation and encroaching danger. I checked the locks myself, ensuring each one was steadfast against the storm's assault. But what of the creatures outside? If they were real, a lock wouldn't hold against nightmares made flesh. I shook my head, trying to dispel the image of the twisted silhouette I'd seen earlier. Hey, Joseph, you're doing great, man, Alex clapped me on the back, his usual humor failing to mask the unease in his eyes. Thanks, I muttered, though self-doubt simmered beneath the surface. Every gust of wind, every creak and groan of the timber, every howl that sounded almost sentient, it all fed the terror that something far worse than a snowstorm lurked just beyond our sight. As darkness claimed the world outside and the snow piled high, barricading us within our opulent prison, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone, that eyes unseen watched and waited. And in those moments of eerie silence between the bursts of the tempest's rage, I could have sworn I heard whispers carried on the wind, calling my name with a frostbitten breath. Stay strong, I whispered to myself. You have to protect them. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could. The wind shrieked against the cabin, a banshee announcing doom. The windows trembled in their panes, and through the frosted glass, I could see nothing but a relentless whirl of white. Snow had become our jailer, and the mountains our cell. Joseph, we have to try, Melanie urged, her voice thin with desperation. Her breaths came out in visible puffs, the power having failed us hours ago. I nodded, my heart hammering in my chest as I led our small band toward the back door. The idea was to find a way down the mountain before we were completely cut off, before the sinister whispers materialized into something more tangible. Okay, on 3. Push, I commanded, and together we heaved against the door. It groaned open, revealing a wall of snow that greeted us like the cold hand of the grave. Fallen trees crisscrossed beyond, nature's own barricade. Our escape routes were choked by winter's wrath, and panic fluttered in my gut like a trapped bird. Damn it, there's no way out this way, Alex exclaimed, his gaze darting around for alternatives that didn't exist. Back inside now, I shouted over the howl of the storm. We retreated into the cabin, the door slamming shut behind us as if the very house wanted to keep the outside horrors at bay. But safety was an illusion. Guys, look at this. Emily's voice was barely audible, yet it cut through the tension like a knife through flesh. We crowded by the window where she stood, frozen in fear. Long, deliberate scratches marred the glass, a silent testament to the creature's boldness. And beneath the sill, in the soft light spilling from inside, lay a series of footprints, too large to be human, too purposeful to be anything but predatory. Something's out there, Emily whimpered. Something, Alex scoffed, though his face had lost all color. You mean some things? Keep it together, I urged them, though my voice wavered. The creatures were playing with us, I realized, a cat with its cornered mice. Where's Sarah? Melanie's question hung in the air, heavy and horrifying. We scanned the room. 2, 4, 6, 1 missing. My skin crawled with the realization. Sarah? I called, hoping for an answer that never came. Maybe she's upstairs, Alex offered, but his suggestion sounded hollow. Let's check together, I said. The group moved as one, huddling close, checking each room, under beds, behind doors. But Sarah wasn't hiding. She was gone. Where the hell could she go? Emily's whisper betrayed her rising hysteria. Shh, I hissed, my ears straining. A soft patter echoed from downstairs, the sound of snow falling from boots onto wood. Someone's down there, Melanie mouthed. Stay here, I instructed, moving toward the stairs. I descended step by cautious step, the others peering from above. The front door stood ajar, a gash letting in the icy night. Sarah, my voice broke the silence, met only by the mocking wind. Joseph. Melanie's scream pierced the night, dragging me back upstairs 2 steps at a time. Melanie? What happened? I gasped, bursting into the room they'd occupied. Alex. She pointed to the shattered window, the curtain fluttering like a specter in the storm. Another friend vanished into the hungry night. Melanie, Emily, stay close to me, I pleaded, dread forming a knot in my throat. The creatures were picking us off, one by one, bolder than the storm itself. Emily? Melanie's voice quaked as she turned, finding herself suddenly alone with me. Emily! I roared into the abyss of the cabin, knowing the echo was all that would answer. Joseph, what do we do? Melanie's eyes searched mine for hope, for a plan, for salvation. Survive, I answered, my resolve hardening. We survive the night. I flung the door open, a howl of frozen air blasting against my face like shards of glass. Melanie clutched at my arm, her fingernails digging into my flesh. Before us, in the sickly pallor of dawn, lay Mark's mutilated body, half buried in the snow. God, no. Melanie's voice withered into sobs. Get back inside, I barked, terror sharpening my words as I shoved her toward the cabin. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready for the unseen horrors that stalked us from the shadows. Where are they? What did this? Melanie was frantic, her eyes darting to every corner of the dimly lit room. Quiet, I whispered, straining to hear beyond the crackling fire and the gale outside. But it was the silence that unnerved me. The predators were silent now, their approach masked by the storm. Joseph, they're hunting us. It's like they're playing some sick game. Melanie trembled, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Then we won't play. Resolve coursed through me, but it was laced with an icy thread of fear. No more running, no more hiding. This was about survival, raw and primal. The cabin groaned under another assault of wind, the timbers shuddering. Then came the scratching, a sound that seemed to crawl along my spine, a deliberate, malicious rasp against the door. Back away from there. I pulled Melanie behind me, my heart pounding in my ears. But she resisted, her eyes fixed on something behind me, her scream tearing through the silence. Joseph, her hand pointed trembling towards the window. I whirled around to see them, sinister figures materializing out of the blizzard, their eyes hollow pits of darkness. One slammed against the window pane, its mouth opening in a grotesque mockery of a grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Board up the windows, I yelled, grabbing a chair and smashing it against the advancing creature. Wood splintered, but the thing barely recoiled before striking again, its fingers clawing at the broken glass. Help me, Melanie cried out, dragging a heavy bookshelf across the floor. We worked in frenzied tandem, barricading anything that could give those monsters entry. Is this really happening? Melanie's voice was a hoarse whisper between the thuds of furniture against wood. Focus, I snapped, not because I doubted her, but because I couldn't afford to doubt myself. The first creature broke through just as we shoved the couch against the last window. A whirlwind of snow and shadow burst into the room, bringing with it a stench of death. The others followed, a relentless tide of hunger and malice. Fight! I grasped a fireplace poker, swinging wildly as one lunged for Melanie. Its screech pierced the chaos as the iron connected. A fleeting victory, the fleeting victory before more swarmed inside. Joseph! Melanie's cry cut through the tumult, but when I turned, she was gone, lost amidst the maelstrom of flailing limbs and gnashing teeth. Melanie. Desperation fueled my swings, each strike a plea for life, but they were everywhere, shadows given form and fury. Get off me! My shout was a thunderclap in the roar of battle, even as I felt their cold hands tearing at me, dragging me down into the abyss of their world. The cabin became a vortex of violence, a blur of motion and terror where blood was warmth, rapidly cooling on the frosty floor. And as I fought, my thoughts fractured like ice. There was no escape, no salvation, only the relentless horror of survival. The wind howled like a banshee as we huddled in the skeleton of an old miner's shack, our breaths misting the frigid air. I clutched my arms around myself, feeling the cold seep into my bones, despite the layers of thermal clothing. The icy fingers of fear crept along my spine, not just from the cold, but from the unnerving knowledge that the Wendigo prowled out there, somewhere in the swirling snow. Damn it, James. We can't just sit here and wait for that thing to pick us off. Tom's voice cut through the tense silence, sharp as the icicles dangling from the splintered roof beams. Quiet, Tom? I hissed, casting a wary glance towards the windows, their glass long shattered, leaving only gaping maws that allowed the relentless wind to invade our sanctuary. We need to conserve energy and stay warm. Our best chance is to remain calm and think this through. Think it through, Sam scoffed, her dark eyes flashing with frustration. While you think, whatever is out there is getting closer. She gestured to the empty, snow-choked streets of the abandoned mining town, each building a tombstone in this graveyard of human endeavor. Sam's right, Izzy chimed in, her voice trembling. Her youthful optimism had been replaced by raw fear, and it pained me to see her so vulnerable. We need a plan, not just hope. Hope might be all we have left, Nathan murmured from the shadows, where he sat apart from the group, cradling a worn copy of a geological survey like a talisman against the unknown. Hope doesn't fortify doors, Nathan, Ollie grunted, already moving to barricade the entrance with whatever debris he could find. Rotted planks, rusted mining equipment, remnants of lives long forgotten. I watched the team fracture before my eyes, each person retreating into their own brand of despair. My heart pounded a frenzied rhythm, echoing the urgency of our situation. We were a group of brilliant minds, experts in our respective fields, yet here we were, outmatched by the primal horror of the Wendigo, a creature that defied explanation, a monster born from the very essence of hunger and cold. Listen to me, everyone, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. We can't let fear divide us. We've faced challenges before, but none like this. Together, we've got a chance. Alone, we're as good as dead. They looked at me then, their expressions a tapestry of doubt and desperation. But beneath it all, I saw the flicker of resolve. We were survivors, each and every one of us. Whether facing the unrelenting forces of nature or staring down the stuff of nightmares, we had always found a way. James is right, Tom conceded, though the set of his jaw told me his pride took a hit. Let's figure this out, together. Agreed, Sam said, nodding curtly. But let's make it quick. That thing out there isn't going to wait for us to reach a consensus. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath that did little to quell the unease coiling in my gut. First, we secure this place as best we can. Then, we'll come up with an exit strategy. We're not going down without a fight. As they sprang into action, boarding up windows and sealing cracks, I couldn't shake the nagging thought that the Wendigo was more than just a predator. It was the embodiment of this harsh, unforgiving land, a symbol of the struggle between humanity and the dark, insatiable void. And in that moment, the true horror struck me. Even as we fought for survival, we were being hunted by something far older and more terrifying than any storm or beast of prey. Something that wouldn't rest until it had consumed us all. A howl split the silence, slicing through the wind's mournful cries like a knife. We froze, the warmth we'd fought to kindle now a forgotten ember in the face of such primal terror. Our breaths hung suspended, crystalline puffs that seemed too loud in the newfound hush following that dreadful sound. Nobody spoke, nobody moved, but our wide-eyed stares spoke volumes. The feral call had confirmed what we secretly dreaded. We were not alone in this ghost town. Inside, now. Ollie's voice cut through the paralyzing fear with the sharpness of a commander rallying his troops. His deep-set eyes darted around, seeking out shadows that might be harboring our unseen hunter. Sam was the first to react, her survival instincts kicking in as she ushered us toward the nearest dilapidated building. "Split up," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the mounting gale. "Look for tracks, any sign it left behind." I found myself nodding, the researcher part of my brain clicking into gear despite the dread pooling in my stomach. I glanced at Dr. Montgomery, who met my gaze with a grim determination. There was no question about it. We had to find a safe place to hide before the Wendigo did more than just announce its presence. "Tom, Izzy, you're with me." Dr. Montgomery's command was calm, but carried an undercurrent of urgency. The young biologist nodded, her usual vibrancy dimmed by the gravity of our situation. Tom, still wearing traces of his earlier bravado, stepped up with a determined clench to his jaw. "Ollie, Nathan, you're with me," Sam ordered. She caught my eye for a fraction of a second, a silent promise that we'd watch each other's backs. And then she was leading her group away, their footsteps crunching against the snow. Left in the biting cold, I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. As the leader of my small faction, I steered us toward the shadowy interior of what once must have been the town's general store. "Quick and quiet," I instructed, my voice trembling despite my efforts. Inside, the darkness was oppressive, the only light coming from the gaps in the boarded-up windows. "Check the back," I told Tom, who nodded and disappeared behind a row of empty shelves, his flashlight a small beacon in the gloom. "Anything?" I called softly after a moment, my own flashlight sweeping across the dusty floor, looking for evidence of intrusion or escape. "Nothing here," Tom replied, re-emerging with a shake of his head. "It's clear." Then we secure this spot, I decided, feeling the walls for sturdiness. They would have to do. But even as I checked for witnesses in our temporary refuge, the echo of that haunting cry lingered in my ears. A stark reminder that the Wendigo was out there, somewhere, and we were in its domain now. A crimson streak in the snow snagged my gaze, a stark contrast to the surrounding whiteness. My breath hitched, frost clinging to my scarf as I crouched beside the gruesome trail. "Over here," I hissed, signaling the others with a mix of urgency and dread. Tom and Izzy joined me at the crimson-stained snow, their faces pale in the dim light. The trail led away from the general store, disappearing into the howling wilderness beyond. I could feel the tension mounting in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the danger we faced. "Is that blood?" Izzy's voice quivered, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. "It looks fresh," Tom observed, his breath forming misty clouds in the frigid air. "We have to follow it." A chill crept down my spine as I realized what this meant. The Wendigo was not just a distant threat. It was here, among us, its hunger manifest in this macabre path it had left behind. "We stick together," I ordered, my own voice betraying a flicker of uncertainty. "Stay close and stay quiet." With grim determination, we set off into the unforgiving landscape where shadows danced like sinister specters in the twisting light of the fading day. Each step left a mark in the pristine snow, a reminder of our presence in this desolate place. The trail of blood led us deeper into the heart of the abandoned town, past crumbling buildings and broken remnants of lives, interrupted by some ancient horror. As we followed the ominous path, a sense of unease settled over us like a suffocating blanket. The wind whispered through skeletal branches, carrying with it a bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep into our very souls. I could see the fear reflected in my companion's eyes, a silent understanding passing between us that we were treading on ground tainted by something far more sinister than we had ever encountered. The trail eventually led us to an old mine shaft, its yawning maw gaping like the hungry jaws of some forgotten beast. The air around it seemed to grow colder, the very atmosphere thick with dread. I exchanged a wary glance with Tom and Izzy, their expressions mirroring my own apprehension. Whatever lurked within that mine was a mystery we were compelled to unravel, even as every instinct screamed at us to turn back and flee. "We can't go in there," Izzy's voice quavered, her hands trembling at her sides. "We have to," Tom insisted, his tone firm despite the fear lurking in his eyes. "If we want to have any chance of surviving this, we need to confront whatever's causing this chaos head on." I nodded, my jaw set in grim determination. There was no turning back now. With a deep breath to steady my nerves, I took the lead, venturing into the darkness of the mine shaft. The air grew thick with dust, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the walls like ominous whispers. As we delved deeper into the belly of the mine, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The walls seemed to close in around us, suffocating and oppressive. Every shadow held untold horrors that threatened to spring forth at any moment, shrouded in the darkness that enveloped us like a suffocating cloak. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood that clung to the walls in streaked patterns, a macabre mural of terror. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a thunderous reminder of our vulnerability in this desolate place. I could feel the weight of gazes watching us from unseen corners, a palpable malevolence that made my skin crawl. A soft whimper from Izzy broke the silence, her grip on my arm tightening as we pressed forward into the unknown depths of the mine. Tom's breath hitched beside me, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand as we navigated the labyrinthine tunnels that seemed to twist and turn endlessly. And then, a sudden shift in the shadows ahead caught my attention, a subtle movement, fleeting yet unmistakable. I raised a hand to halt. Our progress, my heart hammering in my chest as I strained to see through the murky darkness. The faint sound of shuffling echoed off the walls, sending a shiver down my spine. "Did you see that?" Tom's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes wide with apprehension. Before I could respond, a low growl reverberated through the tunnel, chilling me to the core. The air seemed to thicken with an otherworldly presence, suffused with a primal malice that prickled at my skin. I gestured for silence, my grip tightening on the flashlight as I slowly advanced, every nerve on edge. As we crept closer, the shadows seemed to coalesce into a grotesque figure, hunched over in the darkness. Antlers twisted like gnarled branches adorned its skeletal frame, and the stench of decay grew overpowering. The Wendigo stood before us, its eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent a bolt of terror through my veins. Time seemed to slow as we beheld the grotesque form before us, a monstrous fusion of man and beast that defied all reason and sanity. Its gaunt limbs were twisted with sinew and bone, its elongated fingers tipped with razor-sharp claws that gleamed malevolently in the dim light. A guttural growl reverberated from the creature's chest, sending a shockwave of fear through our small group. I could feel my companions trembling beside me, their breaths coming in shallow gasps as we stood frozen in terror. The Wendigo's eyes bore into mine, a chilling intelligence lurking within their depths. It sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring as it seemed to assess us with a predatory gaze. I knew then that we were nothing more than prey to this ancient evil, mere morsels to sate its insatiable hunger. With a sudden surge of movement, the Wendigo lunged forward, its movements swift and unnatural as it closed the distance between us in a blur of motion. Instinct took over as I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness to reveal the creature's twisted form in stark detail. Its pallid skin was stretched taut over its skeletal frame, veins pulsing beneath the surface like writhing serpents. Without hesitation, Tom sprang into action, brandishing a makeshift weapon he had fashioned from a broken piece of wood. The sound of his defiant shout echoed off the walls of the tunnel as he thrust the crude spear toward the Wendigo, aiming for its heart with unwavering determination. The Wendigo's antlered head jerked to the side with an eerie grace, narrowly avoiding Tom's strike. In retaliation, it lashed out with a clawed hand, swiping at him with blinding speed. Tom stumbled backward, a gash appearing on his forearm where the creature's claws had grazed his flesh. A surge of adrenaline coursed through me, yet I stood frozen in shock as our group amid panicked screams. I watched in horror as the creature turned and finished what it had started, devouring Tom alive, his cries reverberating in a sickening chorus of death. I finally broke and ran headlong into the darkness, the sounds of the others fading behind me. I can hear the occasional scream, some further, some closer. The beast is finishing us off. I don't know if my story will make it out of here, but I don't think I will. The sun is a relentless overlord. Its fiery gaze scorches the earth beneath my boots as I lead my team through the jagged maw of the canyon. Every step I take is an act of defiance against the unforgiving terrain of the American Southwest. The canyons around us are like the ribs of some ancient slumbering beast, and we, mere mortals, dare to tread upon its bones. "Keep close," I call out, my voice barely carrying over the sound of our synchronized footsteps that reverberate against the oppressive walls. The echo serves as a haunting reminder that in this place, nature does not yield. Dominates. My fingers brush against the worn leather of my satchel. It's heavy with the tools of our trade, but it's my resolve that truly weighs on me. As we venture deeper, the silence is absolute, save for the occasional clatter of a loose stone kicked down the path by one of us. Each echo feels like a taunt, as if the canyon itself is mocking our pursuit of knowledge, our hunger to unearth secrets long buried within its sinewy depths. I squint against the glare of the sun, which seems to aim its blistering rays with malicious intent. Even the air we breathe is tinged with the taste of dust and desolation, a stark reminder of how inhospitable this ancient land is to those who dare to unveil its mysteries. The heat wraps around us like a shroud, suffocating and unyielding. Our journey today is driven by whispers of the past, tales of petroglyphs etched into the canyon's flesh holding truths untold. With each step, the anticipation builds within me, a gnawing curiosity that has become my constant companion. It's that very curiosity that has led me here, where the lines between academic pursuit and obsession blur. The landscape is a canvas of desolation, painted with hues of red and orange that bleed into one another under the harsh gaze of the sun. In the distance, the outline of the canyon walls rise up like the jagged teeth of some primordial creature, ready to snap shut at any moment. And yet, Amidst the stark brutality of this place, there is a beauty, an undeniable rawness that fuels my passion. "Sam, watch your step," comes a cautious voice from behind me, reminding me that even in my fervor, I am not alone. We are a team, bound together by a shared thirst for discovery and the thrill of the unknown. Our destination lies ahead, veiled in shadow and silence, beckoning us to uncover what lies beyond the realm of the living. The sun may be merciless, the silence overwhelming, but my heart races with the promise of discovery. For within these ancient walls lie stories waiting to be told, horrors to be faced, and truths to be revealed. And I, Dr. Sam Jameson, will stop at nothing to bring them into the light. "Pass me the brush, will you?" I called out, my voice a stark contrast to the sibilant whispers of sand skittering across rock. My fingers itched for the tool as I hovered over a promising fissure that cleaved through the earth at my feet. "Here," grunted Mark, the team's geologist, his hand extending a worn brush with bristles frayed from use. His skeptical eye never failed to question my hunches, yet here he was, indulging my instincts. Our relationship was a dance of respect and rivalry, each step measured, each turn sharp with silent challenges. "Thanks," I muttered, focusing on the task. The excavation was delicate work. Every stroke had to be precise, like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. The others watched, a circle of guardians against the encroaching dread of the canyons. "Think we'll find anything, Sam?" asked Jenna, her tone light, but her eyes betraying a glimmer of the same hunger that drove us all. She was the youngest of us, eager and bright, her presence a balm to the raw edges of our group's dynamics. "Something calls to us from these stones," I replied, more to myself than to her. "I can feel it." The sun bore down, an unyielding overseer, as we worked in tense silence. Time slipped by unnoticed, measured only by the shadows that began their slow crawl across the canyon floor. And then my brush caught on something. A line. No, several lines etched into the rock. With each careful sweep, a form emerged, grooves deepened by ancient hands, revealing a petroglyph so old it seemed to pulse with the weight of eons. "Look at this," I breathed, my heart pounding with triumph. The image sprawled before us was both mesmerizing and malevolent. A creature with limbs too many to count, a body twisted in shapes unnatural, its eyes hollow pits that seemed to stare back from the abyss of time. "Impossible." Mark's voice trailed off, his usual skepticism swallowed by the sight. The depiction was a grotesque mockery of life. Limbs contorted, fangs bared in a silent snarl, claws that suggested not just predation, but an intelligence behind the hunt. "Sam, what is that?" Jenna's voice quivered, the notes of excitement now edged with fear. "Shh," I hushed her, my gaze locked onto the carving. Was it my imagination, or did the air around us grow colder? "An omen?" Mark ventured, his face unreadable. "Or a warning?" "Neither," I said, the scientist within me refusing superstition. "It's a piece of history, a chapter of a story long forgotten." But even as I spoke, the unsettling sense of being watched crept over me, a prickle on the skin that defied reason. We stood together, a fellowship circled around an ancient horror, bound by the thrill of discovery and a dawning realization that some secrets might have been meant to stay buried in the unforgiving embrace of the canyons. The silence was almost suffocating as we stood encircled by the ancient stone gallery, the weight of 1,000 sun-baked days pressing down upon our shoulders. "Looks like the local boogeyman," Dan joked, breaking the spell as he traced a finger along the jagged outline of the creature. "Or a bedtime story to keep the kids from wandering off," Jenna chimed in, her earlier fear subsiding as she embraced the comforting blanket of logic. "Exactly," I replied, forcing a smile. Yet the petroglyphs beckoned, whispering secrets I was determined to decipher. Tribal tales often have roots in some sort of truth. They're cautionary, meant to teach or warn. Warn about what, Dr. Jameson? Mark raised an eyebrow, his voice dripping with skepticism. There's no such thing as monsters. Just nature, red in tooth and claw. Nature doesn't usually carve its nightmares into rock walls, I countered quietly, my eyes scanning the grotesque figure, each curve and line inciting a hunger for understanding that overshadowed my trepidation. Yet here we stand, debating mythology in the middle of nowhere, Dan said with a dismissive wave. Let's document it and move on. We've got real history to uncover. Right, Jenna agreed, but her glance at me held a flicker of doubt, a shared curiosity she wouldn't voice. But the petroglyphs had etched themselves into my very soul, a mold spreading through my thoughts, dark and relentless. The air grew thick with the scent of secrets and decay, the oppressive heat of the canyons warping reality around us. Sam, Mark's concern broke through my reverie. You okay? Fine, I lied, my pulse racing with the thrill of the unknown. Just thinking. Thinking can be dangerous out here, he warned, his gaze scanning the desolate landscape as if it too hid unspeakable truths. Sometimes danger is necessary to unearth the past, I muttered more to myself than to him, my resolve hardening like the rocks that cradled the cryptic chronicle of an ancient terror. Something stirred within me, a primal fear mingled with a scientist's zeal. I needed to know, to understand what the petroglyphs truly represented. Let's set up camp, I announced, tearing my gaze away from the haunting image. Tomorrow, we delve deeper. Into the canyon or the legend? Dan asked, half mocking, half curious. Both, I whispered, the word hanging in the air, a portent of horrors yet to come. The morning sun had not yet clawed its way above the canyon rims when I set out, leaving the others shrouded in the hush of pre-dawn slumber. My boots crunched on the gravel-strewn path, a staccato accompaniment to the thrumming of my heart. The canyon seemed to swallow me whole, their towering walls a silent testament to eons of secrets. Sam, babe, Jenna's voice echoed behind me, her presence an unwanted reminder of the world beyond these ancient stones. Didn't want to wake the team, I said without looking back, my eyes scanning the rocky expanse for another glimpse of those cryptic symbols that had haunted my dreams. Like hell, she retorted, catching up with brisk strides that matched my own urgency. You're obsessed. Curious, I corrected her sharply, pausing as a new cluster of petroglyphs emerged from the shadows, their forms undulating across the stone surface like malignant growths. Jesus, Sam. Jenna's breath hitched, and I knew she saw it too. The grotesque tableau etched into the rock, more vivid and visceral than any we'd encountered before. This array was a nightmarish sequence. Figures twisted and elongated, human limbs merging with bestial features. A hunter, his arm morphing into the scaly limb of a reptile. A woman, her face splitting to reveal the fanged maw of a predator. Each carving was more harrowing than the last, a parade of mutations that defied the natural order. Look at their expressions, I whispered, stepping closer, the smell of dust and antiquity filling my lungs. Fear, agony, transformation. Or just crude artistry, Jenna countered, though her voice wavered, betraying her skepticism. Artistry doesn't make your skin crawl, I said, tracing a finger over a depiction so vile. A creature caught mid-shift, half man, half thing, that my stomach churned in revolt. This is a warning. Warning or not, you're playing with fire here, Sam. Jenna's hand grasped my shoulder, pulling me away from the hypnotic horror. Let's get back to the others. Wait. My eyes caught on a symbol beneath the carvings, a singular glyph that felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. It beckoned me, whispering promises of revelation, of knowledge hidden within its curves and lines. Sam. I shook off Jenna's grip, heat rising in my chest. No! There's something here. Something we're meant to find. Or something meant to stay buried, Jenna shot back. But I could tell she wouldn't leave me alone in this desolate place. Then help me uncover it, I said, addressing her unspoken fear. If we don't understand what happened here, who will? Jenna sighed, a sound lost amidst the rising wind that carried with it a taste of ancient dread. Together, we stepped deeper into the canyon's embrace, where the sun dared not tread, and the echoes of a shifting terror lingered, waiting to be awakened. The canyon's shadow swallowed us whole as we inched forward, the team's breaths a chorus of unsettled whispers behind me. The oppressive silence was a living thing, an observer that watched with unseen eyes. Did you see that? Mark's voice cracked the stillness, his flashlight beam darting to a crevice where darkness pooled thicker than blood. See what? I asked, my pulse quickening, my own light joining his in a futile search for clarity. Nothing. It's nothing. But the tremor in his denial spoke volumes. The petroglyphs seemed to throb with a malevolent life as we passed, their grotesque figures casting elongated shadows that danced and twisted on the rock face. Each step felt like a descent into the bowels of some ancient beast, the air growing thick, heavy with the scent of wet earth and decay. Guys, this isn't right, Lisa murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. We're rational people. Then why do I feel like we're being hunted? Jenna's normally steady hand gripped mine, her knuckles white with fear. Her question hung between us unanswered. A sudden gust of wind snarled through the canyon, carrying with it a sound that froze my blood, a low, guttural growl that seemed to echo from every direction. Instinctively, we huddled closer, the familiar light of day now just a distant memory, replaced by the creeping terror that slithered along our spines. Animals. I tried to convince myself as much as them, but the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Animals don't make sounds like that, Mark countered, his eyes scanning the shadows as if expecting them to coalesce into the very creature the petroglyphs depicted. Let's keep moving, I urged, hoping motion would quell the mounting dread. We need to find... Find what, Sam? Our own graves? Lisa's sarcasm cut deeper because we all felt it, the insidious doubt seeping into our resolve. Look! Jenna pointed to a nearby ledge where a fresh set of petroglyphs revealed themselves untouched by time. The depiction was clear. A humanoid figure, its body a patchwork of animal parts, eyes hollow pits that seemed to stare back at us with hunger. Mutations, I whispered, my throat dry, or transformations? Does it matter? Mark's question was rhetorical, his gaze locked on the haunting image. Either way, it feels like a warning. Warnings are meant to be heeded, Lisa added, her usual skepticism dissolving into the air, as thick and real as the moldy scent that clung to the rocks around us. Something is here with us, Jenna's voice broke, a mix of realization and terror, something that doesn't want us here. Then let's not overstay our welcome, I said, though my legs refused to carry me away from the grotesque artistry before us. As we attempted to retreat, a chorus of whispers rose from the canyon depths, words undecipherable yet laden with intent. Did you hear that? Lisa gasped, her flashlight flickering erratically as if in response to the sinister murmurs. Enough! Mark shouted, his composure cracking. This is madness. Madness or not, I replied, my heart hammering against my ribs. We've awakened something ancient, and I fear there's no putting it back to sleep. The sun had long since vanished, swallowed by the jagged teeth of the canyon walls, and with it, the illusion of safety dissipated into the creeping twilight. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as we navigated the treacherous terrain. The beam of my flashlight a feeble sentinel against the encroaching darkness. "Sam, wait up!" Jenna's voice trembled from somewhere behind me. I turned, the light slicing through the shadows, only to find empty space where she should have been. "Jenna!" The word echoed off the stone, returning to me twisted and distorted. Panic clawed at my chest. "Mark, Lisa, did you see where?" But my question died on my lips. The spot where Mark had just been surveying the area was now a void. No sign of struggle, no cry for help. He'd simply vanished into the abyss that this place had become. "Lisa," I called out, desperate for the comfort of another human voice. "Here," she replied, but her voice was quivering, a thin thread of sound barely reaching me. "We need to stick together." "Agreed," I managed to say, though my throat felt like it was closing in on itself. We huddled close, our flashlights casting eerie, dancing shadows that seemed to mock our plight. "Something's hunting us," Lisa whispered, her words laced with a terror that mirrored my own. "Taking us," I corrected grimly, "one by one like prey." We moved cautiously, the oppressive silence of the canyon weighing heavily upon us. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating, alive with the malevolent presence we could feel, but not see. Each step became a silent prayer, not to be the next to disappear into the merciless grasp of the unseen predator. Then it happened. A soft scuff of sand alerted us, and we whirled around, our lights converging on a figure emerging from the dark. But it wasn't Jenna or Mark. It was something else, something grotesque and utterly terrifying. The creature before us was a chimera of flesh and nightmare, its body a sickening tapestry of human and animal parts stitched together by some unholy will. God! Lisa's voice was little more than a horrified whisper. "Run!" I screamed, the word ripping from my lungs as the creature took a loping step toward us. Our feet pounded against the earth, a desperate rhythm as we fled. I dared a glance over my shoulder, witnessing the horror as it shifted again, its form blurring into something even more monstrous. Part man, part beast, all terror. The unspeakable sight seared itself into my mind, a vision of pure dread that promised nightmares for whatever days I had left. "Keep moving," I urged Lisa, who needed no convincing. We ran blindly, knowing that survival meant distance from that which sought to add us to its grotesque composition. As we escaped into the relative safety of the moonlit expanse beyond the canyon's grip, I knew one thing with chilling certainty. The horrors of the past were very much alive, and we had stirred them from their ancient slumber.